3 weeks ago, she had walked into an elevator and accidentally told her own boss he was cute. Tonight, she was sitting across from him at a candlelit table in Gangnam. No office between them, no glass walls, no HR policy, no one watching. Just two people who had found each other in the most chaotic, embarrassing, improbable way imaginable, and somehow kept finding reasons to stay. The restaurant was the kind of place where the lighting was warm and low, and the ambient noise was calibrated so that a conversation at one table could not be heard at the next. Dae-sung had chosen it carefully. Tiana had noticed that immediately, the way she noticed most things about him now, quietly, without announcing it. He did not do anything without thinking it through first. The table was in a corner. The menu was in both Korean and English. There was a small vase with a single stem on the table, and she had a feeling he had not chosen this restaurant for its floral arrangements. She was nervous. Of course she was nervous. She had been nervous around this man since the moment he stepped into an elevator and stood beside her with the particular composure of someone who had never needed to fill silence in his life. But this was a different kind of nervous. Not the professional, career-on-the-line panic of those first weeks, but the softer, more exposing nervousness of someone sitting across from a person who actually mattered. She fixed her lip gloss in the taxi on the way there. Old habit. "You look like you're preparing for a presentation," he said when she sat down and immediately straightened the napkin on her lap. She looked at him. "I am. I have been rehearsing my talking points since Tuesday." The corner of his mouth moved. "What are the talking points?" "Classified," she said. "I'll release them on a need-to-know basis." He looked at her with those calm, attentive eyes, the ones that had unnerved her for weeks because they never seemed to miss anything, and he said, "I'm glad you came." Simple, unhurried, exactly the way he said everything. And somehow those 4 words landed with more weight than any speech she had been half expecting. "I'm glad I came too," she said, and she meant it. The first 40 minutes were good. Better than good. They talked the way people talked when they had been carefully professional around each other for weeks and had accumulated things they actually wanted to say. He asked about her family back home, what her mother was like, what the dynamic was between her and her brother. She told him about growing up as the eldest, the particular weight of being the one who was supposed to figure it out first, the way that responsibility had shaped everything, including the reason she was sitting in Seoul at all. He listened with the full attention he gave everything, not nodding politely, but actually listening, the kind of listening where the other person can feel that their words are being held rather than processed and filed away. She asked him about his childhood. He was quieter about it, not evasive, but careful in the way of someone who had spent a long time not talking about himself and was still finding the vocabulary for it. He told her about growing up in a household where expectation had a specific gravity to it, where doing well was not celebrated so much as it was the baseline, and doing anything that deviated from the plan produced a particular quality of silence that he had spent a long time learning to navigate. He said it without self-pity, just as a fact, the way he stated most things, but she heard what was under it. "You don't talk about yourself very much," she said. "No," he agreed. "Does that bother you? That I notice?" He considered this with the seriousness he gave everything. "No," he said. "It doesn't bother me when you notice things." She looked at him across the table. The candlelight was doing something to the angles of his face that she was not going to examine too closely. She picked up her glass instead. "For the record," she said, "you are significantly less terrifying outside the office." "Only significantly?" "Let's not push it." He almost smiled. She counted it. The food arrived. The conversation kept moving, easier now, the initial formality dissolving into something more comfortable, more real. She told him about the 41 rejection emails. He listened without filling the space with reassurances. When she finished, he said, 41 is a specific number to remember." "I counted," she said simply. "I know," he said. "That's who you are." She wasn't sure what to say to that, so she ate her food and let the warmth of the evening do what it was doing. She was mid-sentence, something about the difference between Lagos traffic and Seoul traffic that had been making him almost laugh for 30 seconds, when she noticed his eyes move. Not to her, past her, toward the door. The quality of his stillness changed. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but she had spent weeks learning the specific architecture of his composure, and she felt the shift before she understood it. She turned. Welcome to Afro-Korean drama. Every story on this channel is written and produced originally, just for you. This one picks up exactly where we left you, and I promise it is going to take you somewhere you did not see coming. If you are watching this without having seen part 1 yet, go back and watch it first. It will make everything that happens here hit twice as hard. For those of you who have been here from the beginning and have been asking for this continuation in the comments, this one is for you. Do make sure to hit that subscribe button, as it is your love and support that keeps this channel going. Drop in the comments right now and tell me where in the world you are watching from. Now let's go back in. A woman was moving through the restaurant, late 50s, elegant in the particular way that required decades of practice. Not the sharp glamour of money, but the settled authority of someone who had long ago stopped needing to announce themselves. Her posture was perfect. Her pace was unhurried. Her eyes found their table with the precision of someone who had been given the exact coordinates. She was not surprised to see them. She had known exactly where they would be. Dae-sung did not stand. He did not speak. He sat very still in the way of someone absorbing an impact and deciding how to respond to it before the room notices anything has landed. The woman reached their table. She looked at the setup, the candles, the corner placement, the single stem in the vase, with an expression that communicated everything without saying a word. Then she pulled out the empty chair and sat down. Dae-sung-ah, she said. Her voice was warm on the surface, the warmth of someone who had practiced it until it became reflexive. She spoke in Korean first, something brief, something about the restaurant, something Tiana caught the edges of but not the center. Then she looked at Tiana. You must be the young woman from the office, she said, in English now, deliberate. I've heard a great deal about you. Tiana met her eyes. Good things, I hope, she said. Her voice came out steadier than it had any right to. Something moved in the woman's expression, a brief recalibration. She had expected nerves. She had not expected that. You're American, she said, as though confirming a diagnosis. Yes, Tiana said. Dae-sung mentioned you came to Seoul looking for work. A pause, small and precise. It seems you found more than you were looking for. Each sentence had the same quality, nothing that could be directly quoted as cruel, everything landing exactly where it was aimed. Tiana stayed very still. She was not going to give this woman a reaction to build on. She had learned that lesson from watching Jiwon's crowd for weeks. The people who wanted a scene were only dangerous if you gave them one. Dae-sung's mother continued. She spoke about the company, how long the family had invested in it, how much was at stake in its reputation, how certain decisions made impulsively had a way of producing consequences that extended well beyond the individuals involved. She did not name Tiana directly in any of this. She did not need to. The architecture of the conversation made the subject clear. Mother. Dae-sung's voice was quiet, even, carrying without effort. She paused mid-sentence. That's enough, he said. The table went quiet. Not just theirs, the ambient noise of the nearby tables seemed to thin slightly in the way it did when something with weight happened nearby, and the people around it felt it without understanding why. His mother looked at him. In her expression was the particular surprise of someone who has never been interrupted by this person in this way. In 30 years, not once, not in public, not in front of another person. This dinner, Dae-sung said, is not your concern. Tiana is not a subject for this conversation. His voice did not rise. It never rose, but the temperature of it had changed, something harder and more final underneath the calm. I will call you tomorrow. We will speak privately, but you will not continue this here. Silence. His mother looked at him for a long moment. Something passed through her expression that Tiana could not fully read. Not humiliation, not anger, something older than both of those. The look of a woman who had just watched something she built refuse to function the way it was designed. Then she settled, and she reached into what she had come to say. She looked at Dae-sung, and her voice was very quiet, and she said, in English, each word placed deliberately so that Tiana would receive every syllable. "Have you forgotten about Seo Yuna?" The name landed on the table like something had been set down that could not be picked back up. Dae-sung did not move. His expression did not break. But in the space between one breath and the next, something shifted behind his eyes. The fraction of a second where a man who has spent his adult life maintaining composure is genuinely, privately caught. His mother did not elaborate. She did not explain. She let the name do what she had brought it to do. Then she stood, smoothed the front of her jacket with both hands, looked at Tiana once more with an expression that was almost kind, and was therefore worse than anything else she had said, and wished them both a pleasant evening. She walked out of the restaurant. The door closed behind her. The ambient noise of the room resumed. Tiana looked at the candle on the table. She looked at her half-eaten food. She looked at the single stem in the vase, which had not moved. Then she looked at Dae-sung. He opened his mouth. "I need some air," she said, quietly. No drama. She set her napkin on the table, picked up her bag, and stood. She did not storm out. She did not make a scene. She walked out of the restaurant the same way she had walked onto the office floor on her first day. Back straight, pace controlled, every visible thing composed even when the inside was somewhere else entirely. Outside, the Gangnam night air was cool. The city moved around her. Cars, pedestrians, the green glow of a convenience store down the block, the ordinary, enormous world that had no idea anything had just happened. She stood on the pavement and breathed. Behind her, through the restaurant window, she could see Dae-sung at the table. He had not followed her. He was sitting exactly where she had left him, looking at the space where she had been sitting, in the particular stillness of someone deciding something. The food on both plates was going cold. She started walking. She did not sleep well that night. She lay in the dark of her apartment and ran the evening back through her mind the way she ran documents, looking for the error, the place where she had missed something, the figure that did not add up. Seo Yuna. The name had been said like it was a fact that existed before Tiana's name did, like it was load-bearing, like the entire architecture of something had been built around it before she had ever stepped into an elevator in Gangnam. He had not told her. She understood on some level that there might be an explanation, that the space between what his mother implied and what was actually true might be significant. She was not someone who drew conclusions from insufficient data. That was not how she operated. But she had also sat at that table and watched his face in the moment his mother said the name, and she had seen the fraction of a second that preceded his composure reassembling itself. And she was too honest with herself to pretend she hadn't. Her phone was on the nightstand. His message had come at 11:17. "I am sorry about tonight. When you are ready, I would like to explain properly." She read it 3 times. She put the phone face down. She stared at the ceiling. She thought about her mother, about the second job cleaning offices, about the 41 rejection emails, about what it had cost just to get to this city, this job, this version of her life. She fell asleep somewhere after 2. She did not reply to his message. Monday morning arrived the way Monday mornings always arrived, earlier than necessary and with more to carry than the weekend had prepared her for. She dressed carefully. She fixed her edges. She applied the coral lip gloss out of habit and then stood in front of her bathroom mirror for a moment looking at herself. She was not going to fall apart. That was not an option she was entertaining. She took the bus. The strategy team floor was on the 14th, 2 floors above her old department, different configuration, different energy, a team she was still learning the rhythms of. She had been there less than 2 weeks. She had not yet accumulated the kind of track record that insulated a person against what she already knew was coming. She felt it before she saw it. The particular atmospheric pressure of a floor that had already been talking about you before you arrived. The conversations that did not quite stop when she walked past, but changed register. The same words at a slightly different volume, a slightly different angle. A look between 2 women at the coffee station that lasted a beat too long. So-yeon was at her workstation when Tiana reached her desk. They had moved to the same floor by coincidence of departmental reorganization, a fact Tiana was more grateful for this morning than she had been prepared to admit. Soyeon did not say good morning. She leaned over and said quietly and without preamble, "It is everywhere." Tiana sat down. She set her bag on the desk. She turned on her monitor. "How bad?" "Specific," Soyeon said, which was Soyeon's way of saying bad. The story that was circulating had a shape and a detail that last week's elevator rumors had not. People were not whispering about whether she had manufactured a meeting anymore. That chapter had apparently been superseded by a more current and more damaging narrative. The news story was, the new girl who got transferred from compliance to strategy is dating the CEO. She was seen at dinner with him on Friday night. His mother showed up. It did not go well. And now people were asking the question that Tiana had known was coming from the moment Dae-sung put through that transfer request, whether the strategy placement had ever been about her work at all. She had corrected a document error that 3 senior staff missed. She had delivered a consolidation project 4 days ahead of deadline. Her record was clean and specific and real. None of that seemed to matter when the story being told about her was louder than the evidence. She opened her project files. She started working. She did not give anyone a reaction to build on. At 12:30, when the lunch group left the floor, she opened the container she had brought from home and ate at her desk. Rice, braised tofu. She ate without tasting it, working through a briefing document with one hand and her chopsticks in the other. Across the floor, through the glass wall of his office 2 levels below, visible through an angle of the stairwell window, she caught a single frame of Dae-sung at his desk, head down, jacket on, working with the same focused silence he brought to everything. He did not look up. She looked back at her screen. She did not go and say good morning. Wednesday arrived carrying its own particular weight. She was at her workstation at 8:50, working through the early section of a strategy brief, when she became aware of the floor changing temperature around her. The specific atmospheric shift that happened when someone significant entered a space. She had learned to read that shift in her first week at Dae-sung. It was the same shift that had preceded Dae-sung walking through the glass doors on her very first morning. She looked up. The woman who stepped out of the elevator was Korean, late 20s, the kind of beautiful that was composed and deliberate rather than accidental. Sharp, precise features, flawless, understated presentation, the particular easy confidence of someone who had never had to fight for a room because every room she entered had been prepared for her arrival in advance. She was dressed in a way that communicated old money rather than new ambition, quality without announcement. She moved through the floor without hesitation. Senior staff greeted her, not with the professional deference they reserved for Dae-sung, but with something warmer and more familiar, the warmth of people greeting someone who had been in their orbit for years. Someone adjacent to the family in a way that employment did not quite explain. She walked directly to the glass office 2 floors below. She knocked twice and walked in without waiting for an answer. The door closed. Tiana turned back to her screen. She worked for 4 minutes. Then she looked up again without meaning to. Through the glass, she could see them. Dae-sung behind his desk, the woman seated across from it. His expression was composed and unreadable as always. The woman leaned forward slightly when she spoke, the lean of someone who was comfortable enough with a person to close distance without asking permission. There was an ease between them that had nothing to do with business. The ease of people who had known each other since before they needed to perform for the world. Tiana turned back to her screen. She did not look again. That afternoon, Soyeon leaned over without being asked. "Seo Yuna," she said. "Her father is on the founding board. The families have been close for 30 years. A pause. There has always been an understanding. Tiana kept her eyes on her monitor. What kind of understanding? The kind that is never written down, Soyeon said, but is always understood. She said nothing more. She did not need to. Soyeon had never needed more words than the situation required. Tiana sat with that information for the rest of the afternoon. She filed it next to the name dropped at the restaurant table, next to the fraction of a second on Dae-sung's face before his composure reassembled, next to the particular quality of his silence in the days since Friday when his messages had been careful and warm, and she had answered some of them with the minimum necessary words and left others on read for hours before responding. She was not drawing conclusions from insufficient data. She was accumulating data. She stayed late that evening, not because she needed to, because the work was familiar and the work did not require her to decide anything. She was on the bus home at 9:15 when his message came. "You don't have to answer tonight. I just want you to know I'm still here." She read it twice. She put her phone in her bag. She looked out the bus window at the Seoul night moving past, the apartment towers, the elevated highway, the convenience store lights, and she let herself feel, just for the length of one bus stop, how tired she was. Then she straightened up, put her shoulders back, looked forward. She got off at her stop and walked home. The next morning, she did not say good morning. It was not a decision she announced or deliberated over. She simply arrived on the floor, went to her desk, opened her files, and began working. When Dae-sung crossed the open section of floor visible from her angle at 8:47, jacket on, unhurried, the same composure he wore every day like a second skin, she looked at her screen. She felt him pause, the same way she had always felt him pause when she greeted him and he answered. The same micro-awareness they had developed for each other's presence without ever agreeing to. She kept her eyes on the screen. He kept walking. The morning greetings had been, she understood now, a small act of daily courage. She had kept them going through the elevator embarrassment, through the rumors, through the task assignments she misread as punishment. She had greeted him every morning because her grandmother's voice was in her head and because she refused to let fear make her small. She understood now that their absence said more than their presence ever had. She worked through the week with the focused intensity she reserved for situations that required her not to feel things. Her project output was clean and ahead of schedule. She answered every message from her team lead within the hour. She ate her lunch. She filed everything correctly. She was professionally impeccable in every visible way and completely unreachable in every other. Dae-sung gave her space. She could feel that too, the intentionality of it, the same careful restraint he had applied to everything since the elevator. He was not pulling away. He was holding still and waiting for her to close the distance, the way he had done since the beginning, because he understood that forcing the pace with her had never been how this worked. But by Friday, she could feel, from the particular quality of his stillness, that he was running out of patience with his own restraint. Friday evening, 5:43. She came out of her building's elevator into the lobby and pushed through the front door into the evening air, and he was standing there. No suit jacket, a regular dark coat, the collar turned up slightly against the evening chill, his hands in his pockets. He looked like a man who had run out of professional solutions and decided that the only remaining option was to simply be present. She stopped. He looked at her. "I'm not here to pressure you," he said. Before she could say anything, "I just needed to not be on the other side of a screen." She looked at him for a long moment. The street moved around them, a couple walking past, a delivery scooter, the ordinary, indifferent city. "Okay," she said. They stood outside for a while. Then she sat on the low wall outside her building, and he sat beside her, and they talked the way they had talked at the restaurant before everything broke. Not performing, not managing, just two people trying to be honest with each other in a situation that did not make honesty easy. He told her everything. Yuna, the families, the understanding that had existed in the social architecture of both households for as long as he could remember. Never a contract, never a formal arrangement, but the kind of expectation that accumulates in the space between gatherings and New Year's visits and board dinners until it starts to feel like fact. He said he had known since he was old enough to understand such things that his mother had a version of his life mapped out. He said he had spent his adult life quietly, systematically refusing to live inside that map. He said that Yuna was not a secret he had been keeping from her. She was a chapter so long closed in his own mind that it had not occurred to him to mention it, the same way people did not think to mention roads they had decided years ago not to take. Tiana listened. She was quiet for a long time after he finished. Then she asked him the harder question. "It's not Yuna I'm asking about," she said. "It's your mother." He looked at her. "One dinner," she said. One moment where you cut her off and defended me. I believed it. I still believe it." She looked at the street. "But your mother is not a moment. She is a structure. 30 years of expectation and family history and bored relationships and a son who has never once contradicted her before last Friday." She paused. "I need to know whether what you want is enough to hold against something that size. Not because I think you're lying, because I think you might not know yet." The honesty of it sat between them. He did not deflect it. He did not offer her a reassuring answer that would have been easier to give and less true. "You're right that I don't have every answer," he said. "I know what I want. I know that what I feel when I am with you is the most honest thing I have experienced in longer than I can account for. I know that I am asking you to trust something that isn't fully mapped yet." He looked at her directly. "I know that I am asking a lot." She looked back at him. In the evening light, without the glass office and the charcoal suit and the 12 floors of corporate architecture between them, he looked human. Just human. A man who had spent a very long time being composed and was sitting on a wall in the cold asking someone to believe in him. Something in her softened. Not everything, but something real. "I need a few more days," she said. He nodded. He did not push. He stood, pushed his hands back into his pockets, looked at her once more with the particular attention that had undone her slowly since the very beginning. "I'll be here," he said. He walked away. She watched him go. Then she went upstairs and stood at her window for a long time looking at the city, turning the conversation over in her hands, examining it from every angle. She did not sleep badly that night. 3 days later, things between them were quietly, carefully rebuilding. Not back to where they were before the restaurant, something more honest than that, more eyes open. She had not fully said yes to everything, but she had stopped pulling away, and she could tell from the quality of his messages, less careful now, occasionally dry, once almost funny, that he could feel the difference. She was at her desk on Thursday morning working through a market analysis when her phone buzzed with her mother's name. She picked it up immediately. Her mother did not call during work hours without reason. "Mama, what's wrong?" Her mother's voice was calm in the way it got when she was managing something she did not want to alarm Tiana with. She explained. The university funding, a scholarship her brother had been counting on for his second year, had been restructured. The disbursement he was supposed to receive had been delayed indefinitely pending a policy review. The gap it left was not theoretical. It was specific and immediate, and it landed in December, which was now 6 weeks away, which was the same month Tiana had promised to begin contributing. "How much?" Tiana asked. Her mother told her. Tiana wrote the figure on a piece of paper in front of her. She looked at it. She put the piece of paper face down. "I'll sort it out," she said. "Don't tell him I know yet. I'll call you tonight." She hung up. She sat at her desk. The market analysis was still open on her screen. She looked at it without reading it. The number on the piece of paper was not impossible, but it was not comfortable either. Not on a salary she had been drawing for less than a month, not while she was still finding her footing, not while the whispers about how she got her position were still moving through the floor. She could not ask for an advance. She could not afford to give anyone a reason to question her stability or her judgment right now. She had to be impeccable. She had to be above reproach. She had to figure this out without it touching anything visible. She turned the paper over again and looked at the number. Then she put it in her bag, turned back to her screen, and worked through the rest of the day with the focused, ferocious clarity that had gotten her through 41 rejection emails and 2 buses and a first day she almost did not survive. She was home by 7. She changed out of her work clothes, made tea, sat at her small table with her laptop open, and was working through the numbers, her salary, her fixed costs, what she could realistically move and when there was a knock at her door. She was not expecting anyone. She went to the door and opened it. Daesung's mother was standing in the hallway. She was dressed simply, not the restaurant elegance of the Friday ambush, just a well-cut coat, hair neat, no performance in her presentation. She looked like a woman who had come to finish something she had started and did not need to dress the occasion up to do it. Tiana looked at her. She did not speak first. May I come in? The woman asked. A beat. Then Tiana stepped back and opened the door wider. She did not offer tea. She stood near the table while the woman came in and looked at the apartment. Small, clean, organized, the laptop open to a spreadsheet that the woman's eyes moved across briefly before settling on Tiana's face. I am not here as your enemy, she said. She said it the way people said things they had decided in advance to say. Not scripted exactly, but prepared. I think you know that what happened at the restaurant was not personal. It felt personal, Tiana said. Something in the woman's expression shifted, a brief acknowledgement. Yes, I imagine it did. She moved to the chair at the table, not asking permission, not performing courtesy, just sitting with the ease of a woman who had never had to ask permission for much. I want to talk to you honestly. All right, Tiana said. She stayed standing. The woman looked at her. You are intelligent. You are genuinely talented. You work in a way that people twice your age in that building have not learned to work. My son did not choose badly. She said it plainly, as a fact. That is not the issue. Tiana waited. The issue, she continued, is that I have spent 30 years building something. Not just a company, a family structure, relationships, alliances that were formed before Daesung was old enough to understand what they would mean for him. She folded her hands on the table. The Seo family. Their connection to Daesung is not incidental. Yuna's father has held a board position for 22 years. The kind of loyalty that produces does not transfer. It is personal. It is relational. It is the kind of thing that holds an organization together in ways that do not appear on any balance sheet. She paused. Let that sit. Daesung choosing you, publicly, visibly, in defiance of what has been understood between these families for decades, does not just affect his personal life. It affects relationships I have spent my entire adult life maintaining. She looked at Tiana steadily. I am not asking you to disappear because you are nothing. I want you to understand that clearly. I am asking you to step aside because what I have built cannot survive the friction your presence in it creates. Tiana looked at her. And if I said that was his choice to make? It is his choice, the woman said. In the same way, it was always his choice. He has always been free to choose. A pause. But choice has consequences. For him, for the company, for the people who depend on both. She looked at the laptop screen again, the open spreadsheet, the numbers Tiana had been working through before the knock at the door. And perhaps for the people who depend on you. The room was quiet. Tiana stayed very still. I know about your brother, the woman said, gently, without weaponizing it, or doing something so precise it amounted to the same thing. I know about the funding that fell through. I know what December looks like for your family right now. She reached into the bag beside her chair and placed a single folded document on the table. I would like to offer you something. Tiana looked at the document. She did not pick it up. A position, the woman said, at a firm in Busan. Established company, good team, work that is suited to your abilities. Not charity, a real position that you would earn and keep through your own merit. The salary is here. She nodded toward the document. It would cover your brother's fees, comfortably, with enough remaining to begin building what you came to this city to build, just in a different city. Silence. The conditions, she continued, are straightforward. You would resign from Daesung Holdings. You would relocate to Busan, and you would end what has begun between yourself and my son. She let that land completely before she continued. I am not threatening you. I am not in a position to threaten you, and I would not insult your intelligence by trying. I am offering you a transaction, a clean one. She looked at Tiana directly. You came to Seoul for your family. Everything you have done since you arrived has been for your family. I am offering you the ability to secure your family, completely, comfortably, without the uncertainty of a situation that will only become more complicated as time goes on. She stood. She smoothed her coat. She looked at the document on the table. You have 48 hours, she said. I won't contact you before then. Whatever you decide, I will respect it. She walked to the door. Her hand on the handle, she paused. "For what it is worth," she said without turning around, "I think Dae-sung is the only person in that building who deserves you." A beat. "That is precisely why I am here." Then she left. The door closed. The apartment was completely silent. Tiana stood at the table for a long time. The document was in front of her. She did not pick it up, and she did not move it away. She just stood there looking at the clean edges of it, the neatness of something that had been prepared carefully, the particular weight of an offer designed by someone who understood her well enough to know exactly what it would cost. She sat down slowly. Her phone was on the table beside the laptop. Her brother's name was still on the recent calls screen from the morning. Beside it, visible without unlocking, a message from Dae-sung that had come in an hour ago. She could see the preview, something small, something warm, the kind of message that had been arriving with increasing ease over the past 3 days as the careful rebuilding between them quietly continued. She looked at the document. She looked at his message. She looked at the document. She looked at his message. Outside her window, the Seoul night was doing what it always did, blazing and enormous and completely indifferent to what was happening in a small apartment on the 14th floor, where a woman sat alone at a table with her family in one hand and her heart in the other, and 48 hours to decide which one she could afford to keep. She did not reach for the phone. She did not reach for the document. She sat very still in the silence of her apartment and looked at the city through the glass. And for the first time since the elevator, since the lip gloss and the stranger and the 41 emails and all of it, she genuinely did not know what she was going to do. This story broke me a little to write, because there is no villain here, not really. A mother who loves her son and built something real trying to protect it. A woman who came to a foreign city and worked harder than anyone in that building and deserves every good thing she is being asked to give up. A man who found something honest for the first time in years and has no idea that right now the two most important women in his life are sitting on opposite sides of a decision he does not even know is being made. So tell me, what would you do? If you were Tiana, sitting at that table with your family's security on one side and the man you are falling for on the other, what do you choose? And do you think Dae-sung would come after her if she left? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. If stories like this are why you are here, subscribing to Afro-Korean drama means you will be the first to know when part 3 drops. And trust me, you do not want to miss what is coming. Thank you for watching this all the way through.